Welcome to Power of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, John Connors. I'm also the founder and head instructor of Connors Martial Arts. We teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai kickboxing, and mixed martial arts. Reach out to us, give us a call, send us a message, and we'll help you find their inner badass in yourself. And I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Dan Robin. How you doing, Dan?
Pretty good.
A 7.
I say tentative 7.
Tentative. I sensed that when you came in. I picked up on an energy.
Well,
Yeah.
I told you that right before I ran right before I got here.
You went out running.
Yeah. So I'm tired, but the main thing is I got in a bad mood because my cardio is so bad.
Oh.
So part of the reason I'm late is I ran something like 4 miles.
You were disappointed in your performance.
I timed it. The reason I was late is I was like, how long could it possibly take me to run 4 miles? Like, even if I run 10-minute miles, it's going to be 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And somehow it took me, like, longer. I mean,
Really?
some of it, I think I stopped to, brush my teeth or something like that. But I was sort of, and something
You
like
brush
that
your
can
teeth
hurt.
on the run?
Yeah, stop during, I shave.
Wow.
Yeah, I bring a shade.
You do your ablutions while you're running.
Yeah, I do all that stuff
Huh.
while I run. It's good. I
Pretty efficient.
cut my fingernails. Toenails, that's harder. Well, what I actually meant was I shaved like right before I ran, and that cut into my
your
you know,
40 minutes.
I didn't pay attention to how that
You
affected the time. But
must be miscalculating the distance because I can't imagine it took you. I can't imagine you're running slower than 10-minute miles.
yeah, I don't think so. I was running normally.
Yeah.
I couldn't have. No, I mean, no, I wasn't for sure. But I just lost track of something. Maybe I left the house a little later than I thought. Maybe it's longer than 4 miles. Maybe, something.
Alien abduction?
But I thought, like, I
A little
somehow in my
10-minute
head.
alien abduction.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a period in the run that's just a complete blank spot to me. But like before I left, I probably just lost track of when I left the house.
Right.
I wasn't paying much attention, and I was like, I'll get back. It'll still be noon. And then I probably answered an email or did something that ate
A lot
up
of
the
little
time.
little things add up, just putting on your sneakers and tying your shoes.
But then I was late, so it was I always know when I'm in a bad mood because little stupid things start getting me like enraged and or not enraged, that's pushing, but like I'm reacting. I notice myself that I'm reacting to things in a bad way, and like the littlest. Like I jumped in the shower. I'm like, I'm late, so I'm in a rush. And I don't know if you wash with like a bar of soap, or do you use liquid soap or a bar of soap?
Liquid.
So then you were not going to know this, but I jumped in and it's like that little sliver
You
left.
got the sliver left.
The sliver.
Yeah.
And usually, obviously this happens, but I was just like cursing at the soap and like it's breaking apart because I'm trying to rush. You know what I mean? It's breaking
That never
apart.
happens when you get plenty of time.
Exactly.
That only happens
Exactly.
when you're up against the clock.
And you never like find yourself cursing at a bar of soap unless you're just kind of in a bad mood and just kind of like things aren't. You're never like happy.
Right. Those are
and
pretty
peaceful.
good
You're never
problems to
You're
have.
never on vacation yelling like curses that Dimitri will edit out at a bar of soap. You know what I mean? Like, and then even less annoying. Like then I run out and I have these. Even the intro to this, even as I start saying this, is going to sound so stupid, but I have these new pairs of socks.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't notice when I bought them. And ordinarily this wouldn't matter, but it's my first pair ever in all my life that has an L and an R on it.
Really?
Like a left and a right.
Yeah. That's a kind of a 21st century thing, I guess. But yeah.
I don't even know if there's any different. I didn't look closely at them.
I think they're shaped differently, yeah.
And
It's much like the headphones. The headphones are marked left and right ear for some reason.
and
Dimitri explained it to me, but I still don't understand.
I
but
think it
yeah.
only matters if you're watching something.
Okay.
Was the idea. And
It's the same with the
moves from left to
socks. It
right.
only matters
Right.
if you're watching a movie.
Well, if I'm late.
Oh,
right?
if you're
because
late.
that was one more thing. So then I run out of there and I go to put on my socks and there's a stupid L going on my right foot. And I'm like,
So what did you do? Did
I'm
you
like
say the hell with it, or did you back it up?
I backed it up. But I'm cursing and I noticed like my dog, like I yelled at the sock so angrily that my dog reacted. And I was like, I've got to calm down.
You're
like,
scaring
I'm scaring
your animals.
I'm scaring my dog because I put the L sock on the right foot. So then I'm late for everything. So the drive in, I was thinking like, all right, get it together. Like, reel it in. So now I'm like settling back into a 7. But anyway, that's the long story of why it's a tentative 7 because I was
You're rising up into a 7.
I was kind of riled up between the run and being late and the socks.
Hey.
And the soap.
Thin soap, that'll get anybody on edge.
Yeah, that's a real problem.
I feel for you.
It's a real issue. Yeah, no one's ever on vacation in the Bahamas like cursing at their soap because it's, you're like kind of too keyed up. But I'm chilling back out. I'm settled back down.
Yeah, that's one of those problems that when we're living in the lap of luxury you have sometimes. And you
your
just
soap
still annoys you, but
your socks.
It's preposterous.
Well, people always say that where they're like, well, first of all, let's not take this example. We all agree. We all know this example is just a silly thing. But anything that bothers you in life, your car breaks down and people are like, oh, this whole idea of first world problems, like people are so much worse off.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like, am I supposed to like not mind that my car broke down now? Like, you know what I mean? Like you can't do it. Like it's impossible to be like, can you break like, and if so, like at what level does that, like, can you break your arm and go, oh, so what? You broke your arm. There's people in wheelchairs. They're like, oh, yeah. All right.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? You can't shut down things that bother you.
No.
Because other people are worse, or 99% of the world would have to not acknowledge their issues, Like,
that's a tall order.
Yeah, you're divorced, but so what? Other people are in way, way worse shape. Like, you can't, you can use it for perspective taking, but you can't, like, shut down things that annoy you,
Yeah, there's a big story going around. I don't know if you saw it this week on the internet about a woman, I think she's 71 years old, from England, and she has virtually no sensation of pain.
I saw that.
And it sounds great, but then she's screwing herself up left and right because she's not seeking proper medical attention when she hurts herself.
I did. So I just glanced at it. Is it that she really doesn't feel legit?
That's supposedly what they're saying. I mean, I'm sure it's a matter of degree. It can't be.
Because pain is a so subjective thing. You never know. Is the person screaming at a little thing? Are they feeling more, or are they just?
Well, I think the gist of the article was they've identified some genetic marker that signifies this quality. I suspect it's just the volume's turned way down on it. I mean, because if you feel no pain, then you're effectively numb, right? It's like Novocaine. Then you don't feel any pleasure. You don't have any sensation.
You'd be falling down and stuff, right?
Right.
You couldn't even.
Right. So pain must just be on one end of the spectrum of sensation in general, right? So, yeah.
But then wasn't she also like, and it was legit, right? Like she gave birth and said it didn't.
Yep. And then I think they said she experiences no fear, which is kind of like that guy, Alex Honnold from the Free Solo movie. They put him in an MRI and they said he had virtually no activity in his amygdala. So
so it seemed to her it was like everything's turned down, right? Like pain, fear, anxiety.
Yeah, I wonder if fun is turned down too. Pleasure.
I was thinking about that. They didn't really go into that.
They didn't go into it. It's all very subjective, but like did you
would
watch the movie Free Solo?
Yeah.
Very cool.
I love that movie.
Yeah. But that guy he comes across in the movie. Of course, I don't know him. I just saw the movie. But he comes across as very Mr. Spock-like. And you wonder if somebody who is that low neurotic, that unemotional, if they are having as much pleasure as somebody else in life.
Wouldn't you guess no?
I would guess no. Yeah.
Like I would guess, especially since with this woman, for example, it goes from pain to anxiety to fear. These are sort of different things. And she feels none of it. It's like, I can't imagine it's like, oh, but everything else is turned up to the normal volume, It seems like she probably eats stuff and goes, it tastes fine, but
everything's probably like a 7 to her.
Yeah, exactly.
Scary movies aren't doing the trick for her, that's for sure.
Yeah, she's watching horror movies. Like someone could really break into the house, and she would be like, oh, "This is not scary." So,
which is not good for survival. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think none of this is good for survival. You need pain.
But in today's modern world, I guess you don't need it so much.
We talked a little bit about that last podcast, right? Which is you need anxiety and fear and pain if you don't, in general, to survive. But in modern society, it's turned up way too high. So we talked last time. For anyone who, I can't imagine anyone wasn't listening. I think everyone should be listening to every podcast, of course, I assume. But we said that, people get a panic response like a rhinoceros is attacking you when you have to like give a public speech.
Yeah, they do.
And it's just keyed up too high. Or like you freeze.
Right.
That's another thing. In real danger, people freeze.
Right.
And it's terrible, right? You know, like you freeze when you shouldn't freeze. Your adrenaline shoots when it shouldn't shoot, and when it does shoot, it shoots too hard.
Yeah.
So,
I was listening to somebody, it might have been Dr. Lisle, and they were talking about that freezing. And they were saying they think it's a relatively modern phenomena. But I don't think so. Because they're saying only if people are watching you is when you freeze in a performance. But I feel it's so innate. It must be even when you lived in a small tribe, eyes are on you.
So they're saying
measuring
modern meaning like 1,000 years modern or like 20 years modern?
Oh, no, like 2,000 or
Okay.
some thousand, I think. But Dan, here's the other side of it. So I was listening to the Beat Your Genes podcast, the evolutionary psychology podcast, as somebody called in, and you would just mention that often we find ourselves with too much anxiety considering our environment right now. There's the other side of the coin where there's not enough stress or anxiety. So this person was like living with their parents, and they were taking some college courses, but they couldn't find any motivation. And they would like fall asleep. They couldn't read the assignments. They had trouble even attending class. And I guess the solution to that is to put yourself in a more survival-oriented situation, like move out of your parents' house, and now you have to go to work, and you have to pay for rent, and you actually have the pressure of surviving behind you, and then that's going to stimulate your motivation. Because as it is, they feel like they have everything they need, so they can't find any motivation. What do you think about that?
That's interesting. It's very relevant for me because I have kids going through these ages, you know?
Yeah.
So my oldest daughter is about to graduate college and like start her life. And it's a thought to like, you know, as a parent, I always lean toward like, look, we're here. You have a security blanket. You have a security net, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Safety net.
Safety net.
So if, you know, anything happens, we got it. And like if you know, she'll be like, I can't afford rent. Be like, we got it. You know what I mean? Like if, you know, I can't.
I think it's a fine line. So you have to give them the safety net, but you have to let them feel some pressure to survive, or why would they? I guess they might, but there's probably the danger that they just don't even try.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the middle ground. It depends.
Not your kids,
yeah,
I mean in general.
It depends on person to person, but if for my kid, maybe I could talk this whole thing through, like explain the whole reasoning and be like, yes, we're always going to be a safety net, but it's not going to be right there for you. Like if you can't pay your rent,
right,
you're going to have to move out, and the reason is this: like you need the motivation.
Your kids are smart enough that they could probably hold those ideas in their head at the same time.
But just so you know, and to apply the pressure, be like, just so you know, I'm really not going to pay it. You know what I mean? Like, like you really don't have it, and you see it. I have other examples in my life of people that have, you know, things get paid and then they just don't strive.
They get stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that in my family. And the longer somebody spends in that position of inertia, it seems like it's more difficult to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, not even, and you can take blame and fault completely out of it. It's just the science of it, or the biology of it.
The biology of it. How stimulated is the nervous system?
But I actually think just from that little conversation, I think I might think hard about how I'm going to present that to my daughter. I think it's probably a good idea, right?
I think it's a good idea.
That you have something on the line.
Yeah.
Because also I think they'll enjoy things more, like work. If they're like, I'm going to this job, but I can leave tomorrow, and my parents will just pay for my rent, you know, then how do you get motivated? You know, how do you, you know, and then you probably like work less. You're like, I'm hauling myself in here for nothing.
It hurts your self-esteem as well. So, you know, if you use that model that Dr. Lisle does about this inner audience, if you are not motivated and you're not doing something on a daily basis, you start to feel bad about yourself, but you still don't have the motivation to get up. So it can be kind of a negative cycle, I imagine, where you're getting negative feedback loop, but not quite enough to just get up the couch and get going.
Right. or you can get stuck too. Like picture that example, like my daughter going to a job and she's not motivated. She might be like, I'm going to work. What do you want me to do? Like, you know, it's just sort of feeling.
Have you ever done that, Dan? I certainly have. Been doing something and you're not motivated, so you're putting in an effort that's subpar for what you could offer, and it feels crappy, right?
Yeah, all the time. I think
I call that life.
I think that's everything. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Can I come up with an example where I'm not doing that? No, nothing comes to mind. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I've been highly motivated in my life, and I've been highly unmotivated. And being highly unmotivated, it's not a good feeling, right?
Yeah. I know we don't always bring back to, you know, our base of jiu-jitsu. It's hard. That motivation, I struggle with it all. I've struggled with it for years. I mean, the good thing is I still am there, but motivation's tough for me. I'm having it. I go through phases where I just get, and I'm it's sort of in one now where like, because what happens is people start saying, oh, just go for fun, right? Like it's fun. Meet your friends and roll around.
Right.
But, like that's not really a motivation in a way,
No.
right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
and it takes effort, and you're uncomfortable often. So there needs to be something more than just having fun. I mean, it helps keep me fit, and since we competed last year, I have a competition weight in my mind. I'm supposed to be 175.5 for no gi. So the good thing about that is, like, I woke up today and I was 180, so 4.5 pounds over competing weight. That starts to be like the stop mark for me, where like I don't want to get heavier than this, and the pressure of looking good for the academy, relatively fit because I want to represent. Those are all motivating factors, and you could call them stress or anxiety or something. I guess what is anxiety? When you have a certain high level of stress would qualify as anxiety, but it's a good kind of stress, so it helps me be relatively fit.
Yeah, and you used to walk around at a higher weight, right? Like, so that's what's good about it. Like once you hit that competition weight,
I was 15 pounds heavier. I was 195 at one point. Yeah.
Right, and so now you've set a new norm for yourself.
I've set a new norm, definitely, and I'm probably way healthier because of it.
And and anxiety is part of it, right? Like you start feeling anxious if you start getting up into the 180s.
Definitely, yeah.
I guess in about the last week, I gained like about 7 pounds and then lost it in the same week. Like I can't be healthy, right?
That. Yeah.
Maybe that's why I don't feel so good when I'm running, because I left on Wednesday, a week before.
You went
Wednesday.
to Seattle.
Yeah.
How was your trip?
Good.
Did you get any attempted muggings?
No.
No, that's unusual.
The only thing that happened, and it's a non-story, so don't get, I'm telling you right now.
That.
No, I'm telling you, it's a non-story.
Okay.
But I was crossing. I gotta say it without like, I get like the walk signal, right?
Yeah.
So I'm walking. I waited. I walked across while I have the walk signal, and a car wanted to turn.
I understand, but
walking.
you have the walk signal,
yeah,
so you have the right of way.
So I'm walking, and I'm walking pretty good clip, Yeah.
Like,
and some kid yells out of his car. I guess some kid yells, "Hey, get the F out of the way!" Like, that yells at me out the window.
Was he the driver?
Yeah, the driver.
Young guy or driver?
And I was just in this sort of space.
Did he say F?
No.
Or use the word that Dimitri is going to delete?
I'm trying to have Dimitri not delete. Yeah. No, he didn't. Yeah, he said that song. He's like, hey, and I'm like, I just gave, like, I was in this spacey mood, and I just, so it's a non-story because there was no, I just, like, I kept walking. I just gave, like, I just, like, pointed up at the walk signal.
Did you point with your middle finger or your index?
No, my regular, I just pointed at the, I didn't look at him, and I just
pointed.
I just gave like a point at the walk thing and kept walking.
And you didn't turn your head back?
I didn't do anything.
That's a good move. That was very dismissive. That was a power move.
I guess.
Yeah, I like that, Dan.
Of course, you have.
Dan, your instincts are always correct. It's amazing. Right. I mean, we had the whole thing about instincts last time.
Yeah.
And, if people could get your instincts, they'd be all set. Instead of saying follow your instincts, we should start telling people follow Dan's instincts.
I think I'm like, of course, then you sort of have a second of like a block later, like maybe I should have like stopped and
That
yelled
no,
at him or
dude,
something.
that
you know,
was
like,
perfect. Pointing to the sign, boom.
yeah,
You're saying you're so dopey. I'm
Yeah.
pointing the sign, and I'm not even going to bother to turn my head and acknowledge you.
I guess I didn't really think of any of that.
Yeah, that
I
was.
think it was just the
fantastic.
mood I was in.
That was the perfect response. If I could sit and plan and think about it,
That's
that
what you
would
do.
be the response I'd come up with if I planned, thought about it for a
That's
day.
good.
Yeah.
So one interesting thing about Seattle, though, is everyone there that I talked to or I mentioned the story, I was like, are there people like this here? They all had this funny take on it where they're like, yeah, there's a lot of that. But if you can follow me, it's like, it's because no one here, it's like there's such a lack of aggression here. Like,
That's really funny, huh?
They're like, people are always mouthing off because no one fights anyone.
Nobody
like, no one
pops
hits
anybody in
yeah.
the nose.
And I was like, that's an issue, right? Like they said, anyone can mouth off because no one. They said, and it was sort of funny. Like every single person I said that to, I guess you know Ken Jenkins because he said it.
Yeah.
And then he lived in Seattle a while, and then my friends from Seattle also. They're like, if you just stop and said, "What did you say?" and it's like he would have been horrified. And then. You know, and it's like in Boston, not at all. Like they'd probably fight you. Like it's sort of like, and of course, who knows? Maybe.
I just read an article the other day, Dan, that they named Seattle as the worst dating city in America, and it was some other podcast that does all about dating and everything. And they said, I wish I remembered what the tagline was. It was something like, "The women are unhappy." Basically, the women are miserable and the men are wimpy and passive.
Was
That's
that
what they said.
I
They
guess.
said you can't get a guy to approach a woman there. They if there's an empty stool, they won't sit next to a woman, and the women are just like waiting and annoyed that men can't.
Well, it's a culture of
pull themselves up,
of championing not non-masculine traits, right? Like so, it's
is
sort of
it?
like it's sort of like the being. Well, yeah, think about it. You know what I mean? Like
so
any
this
sort
could
of
be the future.
man bun. Well, it's headed in that direction everywhere, right? Like, so I sort of get the idea. This is what I was thinking, and again, it's all the gray areas. Like, I don't want people think I'm too extreme on this. Like, I get you don't want people challenging to fight someone that yells at you to a car. Like, I get all that, but I think.
So you don't want people yelling obnoxious things at somebody walking across a crosswalk.
There has to be. So this is the issue I wanted.
So wait, why did that guy have to do that? I mean, if you walked in front of his car, what time did it take? I know you can't do a 10-minute mile, but you're going in front of his car literally was 3 seconds.
Well, I was walking probably faster than I ran, apparently. So
maybe like 3 seconds. So
probably less, right?
And
I didn't even
let's
see
be
him.
generous. So you took 3 seconds out of his life, and he's going to yell a nasty comment.
And I didn't
Why
even
is he
see him,
doing
so
that?
it's not like I walk right in front of the car. Like I'm always pretty polite about that. I always have a problem with that when I stop my car and wait for someone to walk, and they kind of stroll.
They saunter.
I'm always like, I'm just like.
Do you yell, "Get the F out of the way"?
No, but I just to myself or like to whoever's in the car. I'm like, knees to chest, buddy, get moving. Like, you know what I mean? Like, haul it. Like, I stop for you. I'm the one who could kill you. But I don't do that. I give the courtesy jog. Like, if someone stops for me, I do like a courtesy.
I do that. I tilt my head back like I'm running, but actually go this. I go the same. I maintain the speed, but it gives the illusion
I agree.
that I
It's
accelerated.
like a courtesy thing. You kind of shuffle, like, okay, I'm moving because you stopped for me. No.
Yeah.
But so I'm always do that. So it's not like I waited, but there's this. I think that's what I was interested in. This idea of that when there's no threat, you can't have like no threat of getting hit, right? Like, I mean, you could be out somewhere with your wife or girlfriend, and like someone will just bother them or bother you, or like if there's no threat of getting hit.
I think you're right. I think there's another issue though. One of the great things about training in jiu-jitsu is you get to strangle somebody in a safe environment, so you can express your natural aggression. So then, don't you think if you were over there training for an hour and you choked a few people, strangled a few people, and then somebody walked in front of you, you have less animus just sitting there waiting to express itself because you're already expressed all that aggression.
Yeah.
So you're less likely to go, hey, get the F out of the way. I guarantee you that guy had not expressed his aggression that day before that.
It is actually a good point. It's hard for me to picture. I'm sure it exists, obviously, but it's hard for me to picture someone that does jiu-jitsu yelling, "Get the F out of the way!" Like when you know what I mean to someone.
Well,
like,
they might. It's not perfect, but I think
that's it.
it's a release valve. It lets some of that steam off. That's just there.
And then the other thing, which we might have talked about, which is if you spend all day fighting with people, not all day, but you go to the gym and you fight with people
on the
regular.
Yeah.
You lose some of that macho, like feel like that insecurity. Like if someone yells, you're less likely to actually confront them because you're like, you don't have some sort of insecurity of like, why I got to show this guy,
right,
that I'm not scared of him. You're like, I'm not scared of him, so
right.
I don't care. Like
you don't need to prove anything to yourself. Yeah.
You have nothing to prove, so you're just more relaxed about those kind of things. You're more willing to walk away from fights or conflicts because you're not insecure.
I think so.
You're not. Like,
and you also understand the consequences of fighting. When you see people actually fighting, you're like, oh yeah, this can be really unfun if you're on the wrong side of it. This can suck. It can be painful. So you're not so quick to jump in and fight somebody.
Yeah. But I think so Seattle's one example, but everywhere I think they're just trying to crush the idea of any sort of violence, which is good. Like, you don't want violence, but it reaches a point, like I thought of it, like when my kids were on the school bus a ways back, and I was like, what if some kid walks up and like hits my kid like right in front of me? Like, I can't do anything, right? Like all violence has been outlawed in any way, right? Like I can't grab them. I can't, without possible real trouble. And it gets a little confusing where you're like, I can't, it's become, the norm has been the law handles everything, right? Everything. Yeah. You must allow the law to handle everything or you're in trouble. And
right.
Then
That's
that doesn't,
scary,
it doesn't
right?
always work, right?
No. I was just listening to Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking to this Yale professor who got into a brouhaha a couple of years ago, and he was talking about the stand your ground law, and he referenced some events. I don't know what he was talking about, where somebody killed somebody because they got in an argument. I thought the stand your ground laws were in your house. He was talking about they're outside in a parking lot someplace. So I don't know if it's Texas. I don't know what state it is where they have these crazy laws.
Not Massachusetts.
Not here.
Not Seattle.
But I also don't believe on the other end of the spectrum where he's like, you should be compelled to flee the area. Yeah. And if somebody insults you, you should be compelled to leave. And I'm like, what? So now we're just giving all the power over to the obnoxious insulting people. That doesn't make sense either, right?
Well, did you have this with it reminds me of with my kids in school. All three were taught this. And I think this is what they're taught everywhere now. It's hammered into every kid. It's if someone hits you and you hit them back, that makes you just as bad as them.
Did they say that now?
Yeah,
is that the thing?
They tell all the kids, and I was like, that's completely wrong.
That's really not correct.
That's not wrong at all. That makes no sense if you think about it for 1 second. Right? Like, no, someone hits you, you hit them back.
Now, let me ask you, Dan, let's parse this out. What are some of the reasons why you should hit them back?
What are some of the reasons?
Yeah.
Well, so then they won't hit you anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's the most important reason. If you don't hit back, they will likely continue to hit you. Yeah. So it's not equally bad. You're not talking about one strike versus one strike. You're talking about an initial strike, and then this one is standing against untold number of other strikes that are coming. That's why it's just and the right thing to do.
Right. It was my kids' first lesson in. I had to explain to them that the school is not always right and that they have to listen to me over the school. I basically had to tell them, usually I will agree with what you're told by the teachers in school, but this one is wrong. And it wasn't like with my kids I had to worry about them.
It's so hard for the schools, too, because I'm sure they get some litigious parents rolling there with their lawyers. It makes sense for them,
though, because they're just we just don't want you fighting. Like, just they're going to do a sweeping law that says nobody hit anybody. And actually, the actual laws are kind of like that, right? They're like, look, nobody hit anybody. I mean, that's why you're not, right? They're just like, the easiest thing, we don't want everyone out there making a decision of when you hit somebody and when it's just and when it's not, because there's too many stupid people who are going to do it at the wrong time.
But you have to, Dan, that people are making that decision. Yeah. I mean, they are all the time. But like you're saying, at the level of the law, you have to come up with some boundaries where it's like, well, now you stepped over the law, so this is clearly wrong. But there's got to be a lot of gray area, I'm sure, right? And we can't just think we're going to legislate the whole thing, right? It's too nuanced. It's too circumstantial and tricky, right?
Yeah.
If some guy grabs your daughter by the arm, you're not allowed to just clock him.
Yeah. Well, an adult.
Yeah.
Another kid, you couldn't do anything. Really.
Another kid is different. Exactly. So it's very nuanced.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you could write laws that's going to take into account every circumstance that's available.
Right, but sometimes the solution is just don't be violent ever. If anything happens, you call the police. You know, and then it becomes there's discretion, right? Like we know police officers. I'm sure they're like, well, I would let this go, but maybe this other guy wouldn't let it go. You know, it's sort of not.
But the answer can't be always to call the police because there's a the police aren't instantaneous, right? They can't be there immediately. So if something's happening, somebody's going to get killed or dangerously hurt, then some intervention might have to be immediate, right?
We've talked about it before. That I think we talked about it in terms of like a fight at a sporting event or a concert. And everyone looks and sees people fighting and says, "Look at those two idiots." And I always think like probably, but maybe it's one idiot, like one bad guy. Like you don't know that they're both bad guys, and everyone. My take is that it's reached a point where most people think the only proper response is cowering. Like if you're a good guy, like if someone's bothering you, and if you have a drunk at a thing, it's picking a fight, you should basically cower, and then you're all right. Then you didn't do anything wrong. Then he's the bad guy. If you stand up, you start yelling back. You tell him sit down. He shoves you. You shove back. You're just as bad. I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people see it that. But I think most people see it that way.
I think so. I think it's a simplistic way to look at it, and it's kind of wishful thinking. Well, if we all just sit down, then everyone will sit down.
Yeah.
Probably not going to work. They also have this theory now that I saw the last couple of weeks come up in that in the Stone Age times they're saying, I don't know how they can how do they know this? This is a completely unproven theory that if somebody came along who was particularly disagreeable and narcissistic and was controlling too many people and was too strong and violent, that the group would gather together and murder the person. And in this way, we've somehow taken those super narcissistic genes out of our society. But Dan, how would they know that, Dan?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's got to be complete conjecture, right?
Cave drawing of that happening or something?
I don't know. What do you think? Does that feel right to you? I think that could happen in certain. I don't think it happened a lot.
It has to be speculation.
But I'm just asking you, if you just were going to conjecture about it, I bet you that has happened in history. Like people are like, this guy's a maniac. We can't let him keep doing this.
But isn't that a thin line? Because aren't those the people that become leaders of whole groups too? Super narcissistic, super disagreeable, super aggressive.
Yeah.
Right? That's who leads whole nations and whole tribes and whole.
I think so.
So that's a thin line between that and getting thrown off a cliff, I guess. Maybe that's the risk. You're like, I put myself out here to lead, and then there's a better chance I'll be thrown off a cliff. That makes sense to me. That sounds like animal kingdom stuff, right? Like if a lion's like, I'm taking over this whole pride, they're at much higher risk of getting killed. But then they might take over the pride too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe that's the deal. Like it's like you take your shot at being the aggressive, overbearing one that leads everyone. And if it's a shot, and either you get it or everyone rises up and turns on you.
Yeah, maybe. I think so. I think that happens in a lot of those revolutions, right? In China and in different places, certain leaders emerge maybe in the beginning or the intermediate stage, and then a new group comes in and wipes them all out.
Yeah. So maybe that's human nature. I don't know.
Interesting stuff, Dan. So we were also talking about how you've been mugged around the world. And you've survived.
I gotta edit that.
What's that?
Attempted
muggings around the world: Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Paris,
New York,
Seattle, New York.
No, not else? Seattle. There was not a mugging in Seattle. A couple in New York.
And you are pitching a shutout.
Yeah, the Ofer.
They've not got a single nickel out of you.
Anything from me. That's I never thought of it that way, but yeah, there's mug attempts from around the world. But yeah, they never succeeded for one reason or another. And it's not like, to be clear, it's not like because I have my anti-mug strategy. It's just none of them worked for one reason or another.
Yeah, it's a pretty good.
And they were actually all different, right? Because we've said
yeah.
all the stories on this podcast at one point.
Yeah.
So again, I'm sure all the listeners are like, the listeners can tell me the episode numbers and stuff. They probably have them all memorized and the titles. But
I think you should write a book how to
but
protect yourself from
But
muggings.
I did different things each time. It
yeah,
was like,
that's why you would have different chapters. It would be a book. Otherwise, it would just be one.
And once
one
again, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
And I again pulled my gun, which I never did, by the way.
I cowered. You didn't cower.
I never cowered.
You never cowered.
Yeah.
That speaks to something.
Yeah, and I never didn't react, too. I never froze.
You never froze.
So that's good. That, which actually is one of the stories, one of the most boring ones that I probably never even told on the podcast, was in New York City.
Okay.
When I was a kid.
How old were
15.
you? 15 years old.
Yeah, I got on a train and went
by yourself?
Yes. I was meeting someone. So I was only temporarily by myself.
So you're out in Long Island and you hopped on a train?
No, Westchester.
Westchester.
There's a train that goes straight to Grand Central.
Okay.
And I was walking across from Grand Central to Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
Which is like across the city. And someone saw me, little lost-looking kid walking in.
Little scrawny 15-year-old.
Yeah. And he just walked up and said, hey, he was like, hey. I don't remember exactly, but the idea was, first he said, like, hey, do you have the time? And I was like, uh-oh.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, so you instinctively knew.
Yeah, it just didn't seem good.
Right.
He was just walking, why are you walking aggressively toward me to ask me the time?
He really needed to know the time.
Yeah, and I'm like, so I just kept walking. He goes, give me the time.
He was late for his podcast.
And then and I'm like, no, and he stops and he's like, hey, give me your wallet. And I'm like, what? I think I told you this once before, but I don't think I said, what? And I kept walking and he goes, give me your wallet. Give me your cash. Give me your money, whatever you have. And I'm like, what? Give you my wallet? And like, I just kept walking. And he's like, yeah. Hey, stop walking. And I was like, stop walking? And I kept walking. And I walked into the middle of the road.
Nice.
And I was like, stop walking? And he's like, stop walking. And he's following me for a while in the road. But then cars are like.
So when you say the middle of the road, Dan.
In Manhattan.
So you're in the middle of the street?
Yeah.
Like on the double yellow line?
There wasn't a double yellow line.
So it was one-way traffic, but you're in the middle of the street.
Yeah. And
you'd be
cars were
more witnesses. You're more in the open.
Yeah, it was more. Cars were kind of at first going around me and going around us, and then and then they were like stopping, and like honking, and
nice.
The guy's looking around, and he's like, eventually, like, damn it, and like just got irritated and left.
Well done, young Dan Robin.
And again, I wasn't like, there was no part of me I was 15. I wasn't like, here's my strategy. I just
but you instinctively
it felt normal. Like it felt like I was confused. I was like, my actual thought was sort of like,
but part of you knew you were in danger. So
because I think I mean, I knew it was happening, but I think a lot of these situations, getting mugged, and I think most people could attest to it, you really do feel a lot like, what is going on? Like 2 seconds ago I was thinking about, I have to meet my friend.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm suddenly something totally different's happening. And it's weird. It like puts you in a weird mindset. And people always underestimate that when they're like, I would do this and that and that. And they underestimate that you're confused. You're like, what is going on? You're suddenly in a situation. That's what we talked about with like a fire breaking out. They're like, I would jump up and I would get a coat. And you're like, no, you're more like, what, am I in a fire suddenly? Like I was about to just see a show, or like suddenly I'm in am I really running for my life to get out of a theater for a fire, like, and it's confusing.
Disorienting.
It's disorienting. So I felt disoriented. My reaction was sort of this, it was sort of normal. I was just like, what do you mean? And they try to get me to stop, right? I think I've heard later, like if you stop, then what are your options? You can't do anything. But in retrospect, that's a little similar to the Paris one, right? Where I just kept saying,
you're baffling them because you're saying
messing
what?
Up their
so
script.
now they're like, you're making it difficult for them to decide their next course of action. Because if you're like, no, and then maybe they'll run after you and grab you. But if you're like, what? They're like, well, maybe he's about to stop. So you confuse them.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't intentional, but looking back, that's probably what was happening. Like their script is all screwed up.
Yeah.
And even if I stand ground and to fight, maybe they just fight or take out a knife or do something. But I'm like, I'm not fighting.
Right.
And I'm not running. I'm not.
So their next course of action becomes more difficult for them to decide, which just delays everything.
Yeah. But once again, he didn't have a weapon, which I said. I mean, that changed. Once the weapon comes out, here's everything, here's my wallet. But he didn't have one, or he didn't show me one. And
he wasn't close enough to grab you, actually. He was getting close.
Maybe he could have grabbed me.
Could have grabbed you.
But that's another level for them, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they might not always be like, we're going to get physical now. You know? They might not want, really.
Yeah.
In their head, they might be like, maybe they've
done if they say, hey, give me your wallet, and you give them your wallet, and a cop comes, they go, I didn't tell him he had to. I didn't threaten him.
I asked for money.
Yeah.
That's true. It's another level.
So
and plus,
plausible deniability of the crime, I guess.
Yeah, and it's just, I assume he's done it before. I'm assuming that's not the first time he's mugged anyone. And maybe their script is I walk up to these likely-looking candidates, and I say,
hey, give me your money.
And they stop, and they look scared, and then they say one or two things, and then I yell, and then they get scared, and then they give me the money.
Yeah.
And once it goes off that, they're like, what are we doing now?
Right.
Like, where are we? Like, this is not how this goes.
Yeah.
And then it's easy for them to be like, let me just
find somebody else.
Yeah, let me just try this again somewhere else. They'll be like, look, this kid's going to walk away. He's not, I didn't do anything. He can't get me.
He's asking me the question.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. But anyway, that's over. That was on 0, the Paris one. And then Fort Lauderdale or Miami was different. That was me running. That one I had to run. That one I couldn't.
I don't think they were going to go for the what? Give you my money? What do you mean?
That was, they pulled up in a car and jumped. They were in the middle of the night. They pulled up in a car and like jumped out.
I think part of the payoff was to get physical with you.
Yeah. That was going to be.
I think it was going to get physical before they even asked for anything.
I think that was going to be a beating. That one, I don't think. I mean, what? That would have just been a beating. Especially when there was a bunch of them. There was 4 or 5 people there.
That could have been bad. Yeah.
But I think another strategy, because I had a friend that got hassled or mugged in Baltimore, and they were like he saw them like a block away, and he stopped and like like the rabbit or the deer that sees them, like stopped and just froze and looked at them, and they actually yelled. So maybe they're familiar with the psychology. He said they yelled, "Hey, don't move." Yeah. Don't move as they were walking closer.
Yeah.
And they kept, that's the only thing they said was don't move.
Right.
As they advanced on him. So I was like, what'd you do? And he was like, moved. Like he just ran. He was a quick kid too.
He ran?
Yeah, he just ran.
He got away?
Yeah, he got away. But I was thinking, even when I heard that, I was like, these guys might have a leg up, that they understand the psychology, that they're like, if I just say don't move, he might not move.
Yeah.
Because I could see it, right? You're
Definitely.
confused, you're scared, you have that combination of the things we've been talking about. You're disoriented, you're scared, you have the...
you're like, maybe if I don't move, everything will be okay.
Yeah,
because nothing bad's happening right now.
Yeah.
Yet. Yeah.
Exactly. And like I'm listening to him, that would be me not listening to him. And
right.
Why is if he's saying that, maybe he's going to just, whatever it is. And then they've got you,
Not good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I bet that's common, right? Like, don't struggle, don't move, don't fight. They just say that, and people in that confused state. But again, I think it's important that people understand that confused state, because then everyone's so flippant. They're like, well, I would just fight, or why would anyone listen? Why would anyone listen if someone says don't move in that situation? And I think they're not picturing the situation clearly, that you're disoriented.
They're totally disoriented.
Yeah.
You know what? That reminds me of this scene that I watched on YouTube. It's from the movie Saving Private Ryan. I saw the movie, pardon me, when it first came out, of course, and I forgot how powerful that movie was. So you got to check out this scene down on YouTube. It's called The Death
I remember the scene.
Death of Mellish. I watched it. It was so powerful. That movie was so well done. And there's a couple things going on in that scene where I guess the character's name is Mellish. He's up like on the second floor or some kind of tower area, and he's fighting with the German soldier. I think he kills one German soldier, and then he ends up in kind of hand-to-hand combat with another. And there's another guy, I forget what this character's deal is. He's on the stairwell, and he's got some kind of machine gun or something with all this ammo, and he's frozen in fear. So he's the guy that's frozen, that's staying there. And he hears Mellish upstairs fighting for his life, and all he has to do is walk up 3 stairs and blast this German soldier, and it's over. But he's stuck. He can't. You remember the scene? So powerful,
Just
right?
frozen, right?
He's frozen. But then Mellish is fighting, and he gets on top of the German soldier, and he takes out his bayonet. And it's almost like a really brutal MMA fight when I watched it. But somehow he gets turned over, and now the German soldier's on top, and he gets the bayonet away from him, and he's trying to put it into him. And then it's really eerie and creepy because the German starts whispering. And in the YouTube video, they don't have the translation, I don't think. But when I watched the original movie, I think they had subtitled translations. And he's saying, take it easy. Don't fight it. It'll be easier. He doesn't say take it easy. He says, don't fight. Relax. This will be easier. It'll be easier. Shh, quiet, quiet. And he kills him. And you can't really tell if it affected Mellish, if he stopped fighting as much, but he ends up dying. And it's something so creepy that this soldier is like giving him this like death lullaby, like lulling him into cooperating into his own death.
Right.
It's so disturbing. And then the soldier gets up and he walks out and he sees the other guy frozen on the stairs, and he recognizes this guy's frozen like a rabbit, like a possum. And he doesn't even kill the guy. He just walks by him. And he has no concern of his own safety. He just walks right by the guy.
Yeah, that was a great. First of all, spoiler, Saving Private Ryan spoilers for those.
I mean, how old is that movie?
20
Yeah.
years.
I don't care. It's such a great scene. People
it's a really good
watch
scene.
the movie, great. But even more importantly, go watch this scene. And you know why I pulled this up? It's because it reminded me of that moment I had a couple weeks ago in training when that obnoxious Pat Browning was choking me and he had my leg cut. And I started to have a stress response and I couldn't move. And I heard this voice that was telling me, shh.
Pat Browning was like the Nazi.
He was like a Nazi
that's what
soldier.
He was like the Nazi soldier. In that case, he was in the role of the Nazi soldier.
Yeah, you could
Right.
say that, Dan. But he wasn't talking to me, actually. No,
Okay.
I was hearing this imaginary voice telling me.
The Nazi in your head?
The Nazi in my head
Yeah.
was telling me, the devil on my shoulder, just be quiet, just quit. It'll be easier. Tap, just quit. And I resisted that voice mercifully, and I got out. But I just find that interesting. There's that. And then, Khabib, when he fights, he gets to a certain point in the fight where he's on top of the guy, beating the guy up. He starts saying, just quit. I need to be champion.
I remember hearing that, yeah.
He's done it on more than one occasion. And he's somehow, I think, piggybacking on that natural voice that's being heard in the universe somehow.
Because imagine you're under Khabib for 4 minutes and he's hammering you in the face. And you at some point, these fighters have to be, unless the true animals out there in the MMA world, but 90% must be like, I'm never getting out of here. You know what I mean? Like after a time, must be like, realistically, I can't get him off.
I just did some training with Jesse McGillicott, who's fighting at Cage Titans on April 6th. If you guys want to see a great fight, go down and watch that. And Jesse has tickets. Just reach out to him. He'll get you tickets. But at any rate, I was doing some training against the cage, and he was on top of me like that, and I was trying to get up, and he kept pulling me down. It's the worst feeling in the world, Dan. It's just exhausting. And, yeah, you get discouraged. It's frustrating. And he really wasn't hitting me even, really, So
right.
It's just an awful feeling.
Beaten.
It's terrible. Yeah. Very, very difficult. But, yeah, so he says that. So he piggybacks on that voice. And then I was listening to the new champion at welterweight for the UFC, Kamaru Usman, and he was on Rogan, and he said he has one loss, I think, on his record early, one of his first or second fights, and he was fighting this Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, and the guy got on his back, and he was like, oh, what am I going to do? And he heard the guy's corner saying, he's about to tap. He's going to tap. You got him. And he says, I think that he was vulnerable enough to admit, he goes, I think it got into my head, and I tapped. And he wasn't making an excuse, but he tapped. But it's interesting how we hear those voices, and then
And it could help the guy on the other side if you're going after someone to think like he's about to tap might inspire you to keep trying, right?
I think so.
Because that's a big part of, I'm assuming MMA, but in jiu-jitsu for sure, when even not as painful, but like that discourage, that voice that says like,
Quit.
like,
Yeah.
or take it even easier, not even necessarily tapping out, but like I go to pass someone's guard and I try 5 times and I'm like, I can't do it. And it's discouraging. Like, it's like, then you're going somewhere and you're like, what am I even going to do?
Yeah, I think we're
like,
wired.
What's even the point?
Yeah.
Like, why should I try this again? I can't pass them.
Yeah, I think our nervous systems are wired that if we meet a certain amount of success, we stop trying that, which is probably makes sense,
Right.
because then you would just bang your head against the wall and whatnot, and not reproduce or survive.
Yeah.
So it probably makes sense. So to override it is challenging. I told that story to Leo Akiki, our friend Leo, and
Which story?
the one about I heard a voice in the academy that was telling me to
Nazi
quit.
Pat story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back to Pat's story. And he said, yeah, that's why I come here all the time, so I can hear that voice and tell it to go F itself. So he goes, he comes looking for that voice, which is a really kind of cool take on it. You know what I mean?
I never even thought of that.
I was bemoaning the voice. I was like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm still hearing this voice. But now I'm thinking it's universal. It's everywhere waiting to tell you to quit in some difficult moment. So if you can do it in the academy, which is a controlled situation, and it isn't life or death, unless you are going with Pat Browning, he probably would kill me.
Yeah, he's a different
left
breed.
it up to him. But seriously, though, yeah, you can safely face that voice.
Yeah.
And tell it to go F itself.
Isn't a lot of working? I've had that voice just running, not today, but where you're just like, I'm going to go for 5 miles, and then partway through, you're just like, I'm so tired, and your voice is going, stop.
Right.
I don't know if you you ever run, but I've had that, or on a treadmill where you're like, that stop button is a big red button right in front of you.
Yeah.
You can reach up in 1 second and end this pain. So, yeah, facing that, I think there's value to it. I haven't thought through the specifics, but there's got to be value in pushing through unpleasant things and facing them and overcoming them.
Well, it's certainly a metaphor. If you succumb to that voice, you're just basically dying. That's sort of what death is about, right? Just like, yep, we're not going to fight it anymore. We're done. I mean, it can be. So that's one of the other great things about jiu-jitsu. You get to feel like you're going to die sometimes. Fight through it. Or you hear a voice that tells you just to curl up and die.
Yeah. Then there's other times, though, where I am not, not in that mindset. It's just different, more like where you can just tap or not. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that voice is rare, but I think it's interesting. It's something I need to think about more.
I feel like it applies more for a choke, or, because then you can fight or not fight.
Oh, right. Yeah, if somebody's about to snap your arm, you got to tap, or you're just being foolish. Yeah.
Because I was thinking the last time I tapped on Tuesday, I guess, was someone threw like a weird one of those Eddie Bravo. Someone puts me in an electric chair.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is this even? Like, even as he's doing it,
probably a good one.
He's like, is this working? And I'm like, I just tapped. I'm like, what is this? Like, tap. But it was like, there wasn't some life or death voice. It was like a different situation is what I'm saying. It was like laughing. I was like, is this a thing? I was like, do you just is this on purpose? Or are you just doing, What
was it, the twister you're in?
It was it's called the electric chair, apparently.
Oh, it's like pulling your legs
My
apart?
legs were being pulled apart.
Yeah, it's probably a good one not to resist.
Twice on Tuesday, someone was pulling my legs apart. And I was like, twice in that day. I was like, what is going on? What is this?
Did you guys get together today before I came in?
So, and then you're always like, for something weird like that, I'm like, is this even a submission, or is this a thing, or you just coincidentally have me like this?
Oh, yeah.
So I was laughing and I tapped, and then he was like, it's called the electric chair. And I was like, oh, okay. I never heard of it. He said it's one of those, Eddie Bravo things. It's like,
works apparently.
Apparently you can get caught in it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can get caught in it, but but I'm not sure how to avoid it because I don't really know what it was. But again, that wasn't me like a voice in my, it was a different scenario. It wasn't like.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is the chokes where it's very subjective. Do I need to tap? Should I tap? Or when you're stuck, sometimes I get a feeling of stress response or panic, a slight panic, if you feel like you can't move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're on the bottom, someone's at the top of you, you can't move.
I've had that claustrophobic response where it's a combination. I can't get out, and then I'm having trouble breathing. Like I'm gasping for breath, but they're really crushing me, and I can't get a full breath in.
And the reality is, you're not going to die. You're not even going to pass out because you don't even need that. If you just relax, you don't even need that much breathing. Yeah.
So I've been able to avoid it, but that's when I hear I think that's when I've heard the voice.
Yeah.
Which is like, you got to just end this. You can just tap and get out of here. And that's hard to resist.
That's hard to resist. Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm not going to feel as bad when I hear it in the future, but I'll still resist it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, think of Leo that wants to hear it.
Yeah.
Just to avoid it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good reframing of the whole thing, right?
It's not bad, actually, to just, if you hear the voice, to be like, well, this is part of the reason I'm here.
Yeah.
As opposed to just pure, whatever it is, panic or fear or whatever.
Right. And I think when you shift your perspective on something, it's powerful. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to tap, though, too.
Definitely.
Oh, that's sad. I mean, sometimes you can resist the voice and then
the other thing
up.
that Leo does to sing his praises here is he crams a lot into his life. Like he'll kind of like rush into the academy, get a lot of intense training and rush out. And I think I need to do a little bit more of that in my life. I think you can do that and be pretty effective.
Aren't we going to rush from here to a bar?
Absolutely.
So
we're going to cram in some,
and then make the most of that time.
Absolutely, Dan.
Is this what you're getting at? Because I'm on board.
The other thing is, in light of the free soloing, I like that as a metaphor for life. I'm going to start free soloing life. I don't know exactly what that means, but it feels like our lives are so safe that in the context of it, there's not a lot I could do. I'm not going to fall off a cliff, at least.
So you're going to free solo, but with no cliff involved.
Exactly.
It seems more appealing to me without the cliff.
It does. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's a metaphor. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but I suggest all of our listeners start free soloing.
I think it's sort of
in life, not on cliffs or mountains.
Isn't it a theme of the podcast that isn't that sort of or the recurring theme, like to push yourself in some way?
Yeah.
And to test boundaries in some way.
Yes.
And to get out of your comfort zone in some way. That keeps coming up a lot.
Definitely.
In the podcast. And I think that might be what it means, right?
I think that's what it means. You know what, Dan? I think this is another great podcast. We should end it here with that advice to people. Tell that voice to go F itself and start free soloing life. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Sounds good? Thanks again for another brilliant podcast, man. And folks, please... we got to mention Craig Lewin again. Contact him if you want to learn how to swim better. And thank you for everyone for listening to the podcast.
A shout out to someone that always gives us respect.
Yeah, John Burke is a great supporter. Thank you, John. He's awesome. I think he comments. He's given us 1 or 2 reviews.
Did we ever say Rob Curran?
We said Rob Curran last week.
Okay.
We should at some point acknowledge the people that have written reviews for us too. That was very nice of them. Mike Schultz wrote a nice review. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think who else.
It's not we'll get to you.
We'll get to you.
Right, and if we skipped you, write another good review.
That's it. Write another review, and then we'll finally mention
a few more
you.
likes.
That's
the other thing. When we're like, could you click like, and people don't. I'm like, how hard could that have been
to click a like on Facebook? You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or on the video or wherever. Yeah. Most of these things you click like, or on or like the stars on a podcast.
Please do that. All of those things.
I mean, that's not that hard.
It's not that hard. Yeah. Yeah.
But now people are mad now if we ask.
It'll be easier. Yeah.
Just click it.
Click. Yeah. All right, Dan. Great job. See you folks next week.